everyone. This is another episode in our ongoing talk show series, Gender Equitable Decarbonization. And today we are going to be discussing about skills for green jobs. In this episode, we talk about the importance of preparing for green jobs to be future ready for both the economic health of the nation and the equitable climate action. We will explore the nature of green jobs and we'll talk about how these diverse green jobs can be unlocked globally. For this, we have with us today Miss Harriet, who is CEO at WRAP UK. Harriet, you have always been passionate about the environmental and social issues and have been successfully able to create a globally impactful grassroots level movement like Fair Trade, which is a certification scheme that helps make trade fairer for the producers in developing nations and also helps improve their working conditions. You have also been vocal about the opportunity of using the energy transition to create equitable employment through green skills, and have also recently partnered with LinkedIn on their green skill funds to widen access to green skills training. I'm excited to chat with you today on the importance of green skills for an equitable decarbonization for both the organizations as well as the nations. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you today, and such an important topic to talk about. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. And as you say, I have actually always tried to think, how can we bring together the social and the environmental issues so that we're not tackling one but causing problems somewhere else, that we're tackling together the social and environmental issues that we all face. When I did go on to work in Fair Trade, which was, as you say, it's a certification system that really seeks to give a fair deal to smallholder farmers and workers, and that therefore builds the markets in countries like the UK, and India, and I was really thrilled when we were able to then launch Fair Trade in India, in the market itself, while also engaging, of course, with so many smallholder farmers, whether it was the cotton farmers of Gujarat, with the tea farmers and the workers on the tea plantations, coffee farmers, really looking to see how can we make sure that the people who grow the products that we enjoy every day are able to have a fair deal and care for their environment. And that comes back to this key issue of always trying to tackle both sides of the same coin. And indeed, it was the farmers in Fair Trade who were the people who first told me about the climate crisis, because they spoke, this is many years ago, about how hard it was becoming to be a farmer because the weather systems that they knew about from their parents and grandparents had completely changed, that now it rained when it should be sunny, it was sunny when it should rain. And they were the ones who really urged us in Fair Trade to take on board the climate crisis. And in the same way, that's how I've now working at WRAP, which is the Waste Resources Action Programme, where exactly we're trying to think, how can we promote whole new models, really, whole new economic models that move away from the current system of extract, consume and chuck, very linear extractive model that's led to the climate crisis. How can we move towards a new model that is much more circular, that is about circular living and giving back, and a new, more regenerative economic growth? So still you can have growth, because obviously there's still so much poverty to be tackled, but the kind of growth can be a different kind of growth, a circular regenerative growth.
Moving on, we know that at the moment there is an increased climate action globally. Countries are setting their targets. We just had our COP for this year, and India, UK, both the countries have set certain targets that they want to achieve when it comes to decarbonization, when it comes to greening of their economy. But from your experience, what do you see happening with this greening of the economy in relation to green skills? In the sense that are green skills keeping up with the greening of economies? Are they keeping pace with it?
Great question, and sadly the answer is no. But I think what's really important, first off, is that the switch to a greener economy, the decarbonisation of the economy, creates incredible opportunities. This is not about hair shirts or people losing the chances to have jobs. The opposite. The door is opening to more jobs, indeed millions more jobs, but that absolutely people have to be trained for it. And indeed, the World Economic Forum did some research that said the lack of skilled workers is the number one factor that will hold back the energy transition. Just talking now for 1 minute about the energy transition as part of decarbonisation. That lack of skilled workers will hold back the energy transition across Asia, Africa and Latin America. That clean energy and renewable energy could create 4.5 million jobs by 2030. That's the estimates that are coming out of all the economic analysis, and each one job directly in energy can actually also support at least 5 more jobs outside it. So, for example, if we install solar panels in a village, immediately the women in those villages have electricity and can use that electricity to set up a shop, to run some economic activity. So every one job in energy supports 5. So the potential is enormous, but what is holding it back is the lack of training and skills for people. And that's why it's absolutely so important that there is the kind of dedicated focus to training people in the green skills of the future.
Exactly. And at the same time, I feel like this is something that holds true for both countries like the UK that are developed and emerging nations like India as well, because it's a sort of it's dovetailing the solution for unemployment and sustainable development as well. So green skills do hold importance globally, irrespective of whether a nation is in a developed stage or is in its emerging stage.
Absolutely, you're so right there. I mean, in the UK, for example, one of the biggest things we need to do to decarbonise the economy is to improve our homes. We have leaky, drafty homes, the worst homes in the whole of Europe. And that means energy is just escaping out through our bad buildings. And so there's an enormous piece of work to be done to improve our homes. But we simply don't have the people to train to do that work. It is estimated that we only have 1,000 retrofit coordinators, they're called. People who come in and help you manage the improvement of your home. And yet we probably need 50,000 retrofit coordinators by 2030. So we only have 1,000 out of the 50,000 we need. Or to give you another example, we need engineers who know how to install ground source heat pumps, which is the heating of the future, so we can move away from our gas boilers that we love so much in the UK. We only have 5% of our engineers trained in how to install heat pumps. And so we face this enormous gap between the potential and the possibilities, and indeed what is needed to help decarbonise the economy, and the availability of the workforce to do it. And that's why a number of government schemes in the UK that sought to encourage people to improve their homes actually never got off the ground, because the waiting list and the queues were so long for people trying to get an engineer in to install a heat pump, or someone to, for example, draft-proof the home. And I have to say, I myself have tried to find people to come and improve my home, and I literally failed, which is why the government grant scheme didn't work. So we have to go back to the core of addressing the needs to help people train up and see the opportunities to develop the skills of the future. And that's, as we perhaps can discuss in a minute, that's whether it's in schools or whether it's much later in people's careers, having that chance to train or retrain.
Right. So we are at the moment seeing a huge gap in supply and demand, where there is a demand and there is a requirement, but because the training is not at pace, we are seeing a shortage in green skills. Which only tells us how important green skilling and training is at the moment. Well, now that we're talking about green skills that eventually lead to jobs that we can call as green jobs, I have seen that in my interaction with people when I've been doing stakeholder consultations around topics of green jobs, equitable green jobs. One thing that I've come across is that usually people have a very tunneled vision when it comes to green jobs. And when you talk about green jobs, some of the things that come to their mind are probably jobs in the solar industry or in the wind industry, or maybe job titles like an energy auditor or a clean energy engineer. But when we actually think about green jobs, what is the actual depth and diversity of these jobs? Because and I believe you would also agree with me, is that if we want a sustainable future and if we actually want the greening of economy, every job will have to be a green job to some extent, if not fully. So what exactly is the magnitude and the type of green jobs that we are looking at?
Oh, you are so right. If you say green job, everybody has an image of a man, and it's nearly always a man, on a roof installing a solar panel. But in fact, every job will become a green job. Because if you work in marketing, you need to look at the sustainability credentials of the company you're working for, and maybe that's the biggest selling point of your company. If you're interested in data analysis, well, maybe you'll be looking at the carbon footprint of the industry you're working in. Perhaps you're a carer looking after people in their home. Well, the way you get there will be perhaps in an electric car or on an electric bicycle. And the products you use, you'll be thinking really carefully to make sure that you're not using and throwing plastic, that you're not using chemicals with microplastics in them. Or perhaps you work in the informal sector, collecting waste. Is the infrastructure there where you can take the waste so it can be recycled back into the next generation of products? And so, absolutely, every job will become a green job. And indeed, that's a challenge to all of us. How can we make sure our current jobs and what we're doing now are contributing to that vision of a future greener economy?
Right. So the actual depth and the actual vastness of green jobs is much more than what we know of or what people know of. And that, I think, also means that we have to start looking at green skilling with a wider perspective as well, because it's not just about maybe having an engineer studying solar energy or maybe someone becoming a clean energy auditor, but it's also training people to be able to repair the clean technology, to be able to repair EVs, for example, and give trainings in such kind of skills, which then opens up, I would say, opens up opportunity for people who may or may not have necessarily high education levels also. So you're able to build trainings and skillings for people who don't necessarily have a master's or bachelor's in clean energy systems or other green related subjects as well, which widens the employment right there.
Oh, you are so right. I mean, this is absolutely an opportunity. It's a positive opportunity. And of course, what we definitely see, particularly among younger people, is that more and more people are looking for jobs that put sustainability at the heart of it. That's one of the factors that helps them choose between one company and another is, well, is this company putting purpose before profit? Are they contributing to positive social and environmental change or not? And that's a key determinant. And so I think for companies seeking to recruit people, it's obviously really important that they do put sustainability at the heart of what they do. And as you say, that's for people wherever they are in their career, if you like, or whatever qualifications they have. I can share a very interesting example of a company called BVT, actually based in Bangalore, in India, and that's a bank. And what they found was that very often women entrepreneurs would have an idea that maybe they would set up a tailoring institute and they wanted to use solar energy, for example. And so they wanted to borrow money to have solar panels, because obviously that is in the end much cheaper. And then the bank managers didn't really know how to cope with this, and so they were turning them down. So then they thought they had this idea that actually what they needed to do was train bank managers in what are these opportunities within the green economy and the future sustainable economy, so that they were open to and ready to lend to entrepreneurs who had brilliant ideas about what they could do next. Or to give another example, Zonful Energy is a company in Zimbabwe, and they've worked, what they do, it is about solar energy, but they've worked really hard to reach out into the villages and to take young people who didn't see very many opportunities for themselves in the formal economy, perhaps they don't have so much training, to train them up, to help them learn how not only to sell, but also then to look after and manage solar panels. And they're brilliant, Zonful, because they have a little sort of app like Uber. So then if you had a solar panel and it's not working, you go on the app and say, well, I need someone to come and fix this. And then Zonful, sort of puts the message out to their team, and then who's ever free goes and fixes it. So people are experimenting with so many different ways to make sure that not only are there green jobs, but they're accessible to people, whether they're in rural areas, whether they're extremely well qualified, or whether actually perhaps they've left school with not very many qualifications, but those opportunities are there. And obviously in India, the Skills Council for Green Jobs, set up by the government, I mean, that's exactly the kind of initiative we need. And there they are working with 500 training partners to help people get the skills they need. And I think that's what we need, government initiatives like that. We need the sort of training and awareness about the opportunities for young people still in school. So they think about their choices, they're thinking about, well, what do I want to do? And in particular, for example, encouraging girls to see a future in doing science and maths. We need employers to give opportunities for their staff to train and retrain, and for older people to get the skills of the future that they need, that they didn't have the opportunity before. So addressing the need for green training is something that needs to run, for green skills the training, addressing the need for training to have the green skills of the future sort of needs to run right through the whole economy.
Well, this brings me to my next question, is what I was saying earlier, that as you said, people are experimenting with green skills, like how Zimbabwe has this app where it's anyway increasing the engagement of people with green jobs. What can be done, what should be done to ensure that these green jobs that we are talking about, and especially when we say such a statement that every job will be a green job in future, this question becomes more important, is what can we do to ensure that these green jobs of the future or the existing ones are accessible to job seekers from all sections of the society, and including women, because this brings me to this whole point of how the energy transition can actually also be used as a platform to increase gender equity in the systems, because it's opening up opportunities for women and for other marginalized communities together. So how can we ensure that these green jobs are equitably accessible to all?
Absolutely key point, which goes back to the issue, doesn't it, of addressing social and environmental change at the same time and together, and not seeing them as separate.
Yes.
So RAP, the Waste Resources Action Programme, what we do is we work to end waste of food, of textiles, of plastic, and to encourage a more circular economy. And I'm very pleased to say we work in India with, for example, the Chamber of Indian Industry, with WWF India. We're working together to think, how can we promote that circular economy, for example, for plastics? And that includes working with the informal waste collectors all the way through to the sort of major manufacturers that you need. And it includes rethinking the products that we're making so that perhaps they're not made of plastic in the first place. If they're made of plastic, the plastic's recycled, but actually also rethinking those products in the first place. And so the circular economy is at the heart of a lot of the work we do at RAP. And so we did some research. We love evidence, we love data, we love research. And so we just did some research on the circular economy in the UK. And I'm very sorry to say our finding was that only 1 in 4 jobs in the circular economy were going to women. And overwhelmingly, those jobs are the lower paid ones, sorting through unloved clothes that people are giving away or whatever. They were the lower paid as well. And in the main economy, it's now 50-50 men and women. And here we go in the circular economy, which we really hope is modelling a different society of the future. We're finding actually women are not getting the jobs. So we've only just released that research, and I think it really poses challenges to all of us who believe in the circular economy and want to see that blossom and grow. What is it that we can do to make sure that women are absolutely able to play their part?
And this is a key point, because here we are talking about how we can use decarbonization and sustainable development as a platform to increase gender equity. But then we are already seeing that inequity in these new systems as well, which should be a major red flag. Because if we set these new systems on the blueprint of the old systems, we're just going to go farther and farther back in our fight for equity, or and we're not going to be able to see any progress. So this is an interesting research that you've done. Was this was done in India, you said?
No. The research was done in the UK. And where, by the way, the circular economy is thriving. I mean, between 2014 and 2019, the circular economy grew by 20%. It's predicted to double by 2030, so that's really positive. And then we find it's replicating the patterns of inequality that we were hoping to move away from. So I think that's it's a really good challenge, and I think we would love to do this research in other countries, such as India, to see what's happening in other places and exactly what are the actions we can take to address and to change that. How can we make sure that women are getting the skilled jobs within the circular economy?
Exactly. The reason why I asked if you had done this research in India was because it took me back to my on-ground experience with the SMEs in India, with the project, in the project that I'm currently doing at ACE with my team, Accelerating Clean and Equitable Manufacturing. We are working in the manufacturing sector of textile, automotive, and chemical. And there was this really, this fact that was very shocking that came out from the work we did there was, when you think of textile industry or textile manufacturing, it has very high women participation. Sometimes over 50, a lot of times over 50%. It touches 70% also. If you look at a textile factory or a garment factory, I have seen factories where 98% of the workforce is women. And so at the face of it, you think of the textile industry being equitable and, gender equal in its operations. But then the real part comes in when you dig a little deeper and you realize that all of these women are doing unskilled or semi-skilled, low-paid jobs, whereas the decision-making jobs, the leadership jobs, the supervision jobs are still in the hands of men. Even when the workforce ratio is like 98% women and 2% men, it's shocking to see that the 2% men are all in leadership positions, taking the decision for these 98% of women, and none of them are in leadership positions. So it was like a good myth buster that, at the face of it, what seems to be equal or equitable is actually not, because the way it has been fashioned is if you just go on the participation numbers, you're not going to get the real data. That's why it took me back to maybe you've done this research in Indian SMEs, because when you do it, I'm pretty sure the data is going to be very coherent with the research that you did in the UK, because I think it's a global trend that follows it.
Let's hope not. And I mean, I think it's great you talked about textiles, because that's one of the, it's absolutely one of the areas where I'm sorry to say the mountains of waste globally are growing. That people are increasingly able to buy very cheap clothes in the UK, for example. They're buying them online. They need a new T-shirt every weekend, and they can because they're so cheap. They wear them once or twice and then they throw them away. And they're either ending up in the bin or they're being dumped. Fast fashion, exactly. So they're moving fast, and then the waste is being dumped in countries such as Ghana, where, of course, some of it can be sold and be used and worn by people, but a lot of it is not good enough for that. And we've just got these mounds growing up. And so addressing that and finding ways to reuse textile materials is so important. And actually, I'm really glad to say that in wrap this week only was London Tech Week. And we launched a new initiative backed by the government to set up the first manufacturing of which would take the fibres from clothing and recycle it back into new fibres that could be used for new clothing. So that's really exciting new initiative that was launched just this week in the UK, an example of the circular economy, actually. But that's absolutely where we have to make sure that we're stopping so much waste, that we're rethinking the materials we're using, but we're also rethinking our very models, and so that we're making sure that women and more marginalised groups are at the heart of the different way of running the economy.
Exactly. This is some key points have come out of today's discussion. One of them being, as I had envisioned, and is now validated from your on-ground experience as well, is that green skills are actually that link between unemployment and sustainable development that can actually give us two benefits with just one solution. And is something that nations, organizations, be it at macro or a micro level, should be looking at, because in future, every job is going to be a green job. And when we have all those jobs created or are envisioned to be created, if we don't have the people who have the skills to fill them, then, it's a broken system again, which we don't want to be going there. The second very important point in the conversation that I want to reiterate is that we are seeing inequity creep into the new systems already. And this has to be a wake-up call for everybody who's working in the sectors of clean technology, sustainable development, and gender equity and other equity, is social equity, not just gender equity, social equity. This is a wake-up call for everyone, is that we need to increase the amount of work that we're doing and the awareness that we're raising around these new systems, because we don't want to end up in the next decade, we don't want to end up with a decarbonized economy, but an inequitable economy. So these are the key points for me from this conversation.
So beautifully put. And I do think the green economy offers opportunities to rebalance between regions and areas within countries, because often, take energy for example, renewable energy can be much more decentralized than fossil fuel energy. In the same way, if we're going to move and encourage people to repair things more, to swap old clothes, so that you can have new clothes, but they're someone else's old clothes, but they're new to you, so they still have all that fun and excitement.
Yes.
That you can do all of that is much more decentralized and offers opportunities to stimulate economic progress, including in areas that have been left behind by the sucking in and the concentration of economic growth that a much more a fossil fuel dependent economy has that effect. And we need to take those very concrete measures to address it. We need to be thinking about this right back at school and the choices that boys and girls are making, what subjects they're going to study, what careers they're being advised are available. And then in the next level as well, and I know a brilliant initiative in Togo, actually started by a very dynamic woman who was very frustrated to see how some of the best talent of Africa was being sucked off to the leading academic institutions of the USA, for example. And so she started a centre within Togo to really train the top talent within Africa about the green jobs of the future, and absolutely making sure, working extra hard to make sure that women were really taking their fair share of the opportunities within this amazing institute. And it will need that. It will need dedicated attention to make sure it doesn't just slip back into the age-old dominance of men and of those who already have access to power and privilege.
Yes, that is the goal. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I'm excited for people to hear this and to learn all the new things that I did today, chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope to stay in touch. And if you have more interesting chats like this coming up, I'll be sure to reach out to you for them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.